Hello, boring people. Tonight we start somewhere unusually chaotic and dusty. You're waking up, not in your soft bed with the gentle hum of a fan, but on a slab of marble near the center of a booming, sun-struck Roman street. Pigeons flap overhead like judgmental old senators, and sandals slap stone all around you. Somewhere nearby, someone is loudly hawking eel pie. The air smells like sweat, olives, and empire. You sit up, bleary-eyed, and try to figure out where you are. You look left, Latin. You look right, Latin. You look down, Latin carved into the pavement, and none of it helps you. You've landed in the middle of ancient Rome's road system, and guess what? It's a bureaucratic mess. You might think roads and signs would be straightforward in the greatest empire the world had ever known. But no. These signs were made by people who thought vomiting between meals was classy. So yes, you probably won't survive this. But hey, you're here now. So before you jump into this boring and sleepy story, please take a moment to like my videos and subscribe to my channel, but only if you actually enjoy and feel comfortable with the stories I tell here. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it right now? Now lie down and relax. Turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's start our boring journey together tonight. You open your eyes a bit wider. In front of you is a stone column rising maybe 3 feet off the ground. It's covered in Latin letters and weird markings. A Roman soldier struts past without a glance. You shuffle up to it and stare. MPXX Roma. Isles. Passus? Is that 20 miles to Rome? Or 20 from Rome? Or 20 to something that used to be Rome? You stare harder. The letters don't even look carved consistently. They're wobbly, like someone let a toddler with a chisel go nuts after too much garum sauce. This is your first Roman road sign, and just your luck, it's already confusing. Let's start with the basics. The Romans invented milestones, or miliaria, setting them along roads every Roman mile, roughly 4,800 feet. Each one was supposed to tell you how far you were from Rome or the next town. You know, like a decent Google Map pin. Only problem? They often didn't. Some had missing numbers. Others measured from different cities altogether. Sometimes a general would order a road, get halfway done, and slap his name on a stone before retreating back to his villa. And later, another governor would correct it by chiseling over the name and adding his own. Historians still argue whether these altered milestones were just vanity edits or full-on propaganda. You scratch your head and take a few steps down the road. The stones under your feet are uneven. Carts rattle past, pulled by mules that honestly look more put together than you. Off to the side, a vendor is yelling something about honey dormice. You try not to make eye contact. You spot another milestone up ahead. Ah, this one has a bit more information. Let's see. Imp E Diven Train Germ Dakes EVS. You blink. That's not a direction. That's a resume. You just learned that this emperor was adopted, deified his dad, conquered Dacia, and probably liked long walks on the Forum. But no arrows, no maps, just titles. It's the Roman version of someone putting their entire LinkedIn bio on a street sign. And if you think that's bad, imagine being an actual traveler back then. Most Romans couldn't read. Literacy was mostly for the elite, so the signs weren't even for the average person. They were for tax collectors, engineers, and the occasional bragging senator. You keep walking, taking in the city as it pulses with life. The sun beats down, and somewhere nearby, a small fountain burbles with the sound of flowing aqueduct water. A cart nearly runs over your foot as the driver yells at you in Latin. You think he might have just called you a slow-moving barbarian. Now, milestones weren't just informative, or supposed to be. They were political. Building a road meant power. and marking your name on it meant legacy. That's why emperors plastered their achievements all over them like bumper stickers on a chariot. It was more about ego than geography. In fact, there's a famous spot in the Roman Forum, the Miliarium Aureum, or Golden Milestone, that was supposedly the center point of the entire empire. All roads were said to start there, symbolically. But the funny part? No one's entirely sure where exactly it stood or how it looked. Historians still argue whether it was a grand golden pillar or just a nice rock with some text. And yet the idea stuck. All roads lead to Rome, people say. Except back then, even Romans couldn't always tell which one did. Let's add a weird detail for your sleepy brain to chew on. Some signs were cursed. Yes, cursed. If someone defaced or moved a milestone, it wasn't just vandalism, it was sacrilege. Inscriptions might invoke the gods, warning anyone against tampering. One even read something like, "May Jupiter strike down he who shifts this stone." That's a lot of pressure just to read your mileage. You pause at a crossroad. One road curves left under a triumphal arch. The other slopes down into a crowded marketplace. No signs. No arrows, just choices. Your legs ache. Maybe you dreamed all this. Maybe you're just tired and none of this matters. But still, you feel oddly comforted. In a strange way, Rome's confusing signs reflect how real life works. A little unclear, often overwritten by someone else, and always sending you in unexpected directions. You keep walking. You decide to follow the road sloping downward, mostly because gravity is easier than thinking right now. Your sandals, or in this strange dream, some dusty leather replicas strapped awkwardly to your feet, slap softly against warm stones. The sun is still high, casting long shadows from colonnades and statues, all of them watching you like they're in on a joke you're not smart enough to get. The street you're on is wide, paved with big, worn stones polished smooth by centuries of hooves, wheels, and sweaty tourists like yourself, though you're about 2 millennia early for that kind of foot traffic. As you pass another milestone, this one covered in pigeon droppings and faded inscriptions, you squint and try to decode what it's trying to tell you. MPXXV Roma, 35 miles from Rome, or to Rome. Or maybe it means you've passed 35 milestones since the last time someone bothered to count. Historians still argue whether the numerals on Roman milestones referred to the distance to Rome, the distance from Rome, or, plot twist, a local city entirely unrelated to Rome. So if you feel lost, don't worry, you're not alone. Ancient travelers were too. The idea of the golden milestone, remember that? Was that every Roman road system measured itself from that center. But reality? Not so much. Sometimes regional capitals like Carthage or Antioch set up their own central markers. It was like every town insisted it was the center of the world. And in a way, for its people, it was. You stop to wipe some sweat from your brow and glance up at a crude wooden sign nailed into a tree stump by the side of the road. You're not imagining it. It's hand-painted in crooked Latin, Via Nova with an arrow pointing vaguely north. New road, it says. Brand new, fresh road. Except again, not really. You follow it for a while and start to notice things. The stones are uneven. Patches of dirt interrupt the flow. It's as if the builders got halfway through and just gave up. Worse, every few dozen steps there's another sign claiming a different mile count. One says 12, another says 8, and a third has a completely different name for the road. This is because Romans built roads in segments, often by different regional governments or military units. And surprise, they didn't always measure things the same way. One governor might start measuring from a local fort, another might start from his favorite bathhouse. You think you're being guided by logic, but really you're just following the political insecurities of sweaty old men in togas. You sigh and keep walking. To your left, a small group of children are playing a game that involves pebbles and loud accusations. One of them yells something that sounds like, "You lost on the via," and the others laugh hysterically, probably an inside joke about how confusing these roads are. Soon you come across another marker, this time a double milestone, two identical stones placed side by side. Twins. You might think it's a mistake, but no. Sometimes a new emperor would remeasure the road system and erect new milestones next to the old ones. Did they remove the old ones? Nope. Just plop theirs right next to it like a passive-aggressive roommate. And these weren't just functional. Some were massive. There's at least one surviving milestone from North Africa that's over 10 feet tall, covered with inscriptions so detailed they basically serve as a personal diary of the official who commissioned it. Built under the glorious command of so-and-so, who smells like roses and wrestled a lion once. You get the idea. And while you're soaking in the bizarre history of all this, let's drop a fringe tidbit. Some scholars believe the Romans intentionally altered milestone distances to make imperial achievements seem more impressive. Say your emperor improved a road. Well, add a few extra miles and slap your name on the whole stretch. Now you're a hero who paved 90 miles instead of 70. Easy win. By now your feet are sore and your stomach makes a low, sad gurgle. In the distance, smoke curls lazily from a roadside tavern. You wander over, slipping past a group of travelers arguing loudly about which road leads to Ostia. One man insists it's left. Another swears by the right. A third is eating dates and doesn't care. You order a cup of something vaguely wine-like and sit near a dusty old man who's watching you with a smirk. "Lost?" he asks in a gravelly Latin voice. You nod. He laughs. "Always trust your feet," he says. The signs lie. The stones lie, but the wear on the road, that never lies. You glance back out the door and see what he means. One path is pristine, unused. The other, grooved, smoothed, worn down by carts and sandals. That's the real road, the one people actually use. You thank the man, toss a coin that might have been minted by Nero himself onto the counter, and follow the worn path. You walk on, absorbing the contradictions. Roman roads are supposed to symbolize order, right? Precision? Yet here you are, misled by every other milestone, arguing mile counts in your head like a tired accountant. You round a bend and see another sign, faded, chipped, and so badly carved that you think the letters might be upside down. You step closer. Nope, definitely upside down. Because here's the kicker. Not all signs were made by professionals. In rural areas or newly conquered regions, local workers or even soldiers would carve quick milestones or guideposts. These weren't the elegant marble monuments of the capital. They were clunky, inconsistent, and occasionally spelled wrong. Some historians even suspect that Roman commanders let underpaid workers carve practice stones to learn their Latin letters. So yes, you may just be reading a typo in stone. You laugh quietly to yourself. If only Google Maps had a Roman Empire mode, complete with sarcastic mile estimates and misdirecting pride markers. But there's something charming about it all. These flawed, misaligned, overwritten signs feel human. Not the cold machinery of empire, but the scribbles, stumbles, and egos of people doing their best to impress posterity and often confusing the heck out of travelers. You stretch your back and keep going. You still don't know how far you are from Rome, but at least now you're starting to understand why. You're finally starting to accept it. Roman roads aren't built for clarity, they're built for ambition and ego and military domination, but mostly ego. You plod ahead anyway, drawn by a weird sense of curiosity and the subtle hope that eventually somewhere you'll find a sign that actually helps. That hope shatters almost immediately when you pass not one, not two, but 3 roads, all named Via Sacra. You squint at the stone tablets mounted into walls. Each one says Via Sacra in proud, bold letters. But they're all going in different directions. One ascends toward a cluster of temples. Another dives into a smoky, chaotic market where vendors shout louder than the roosters. The third winds into a shaded alley that smells like garlic, wet wool, and mystery. You stand there, staring at them like a tired tourist at a subway map, muttering, "You've got to be kidding me." The Via Sacra, Latin for sacred road, wasn't just one road. It was a concept, a title, a bit of branding, really. The official Via Sacra ran through the Roman Forum and was used for religious processions and imperial parades. But over time, as cities expanded and locals built offshoots or mimicked the name for prestige, the term spread like a fashion trend no one wanted to admit was confusing. Historians still argue whether these multiple Via Sacras were officially sanctioned or just the result of civic vanity. Kind of like naming every new apartment complex the Heights, regardless of elevation. You pick one, because why not, and start up the hill toward the temples. The paving stones here are wide and flanked by carved gutters designed to wash away rain and presumably less pleasant liquids. You pass a marble marker that once again proclaims Via Sacra, as if to reassure you that you're not hallucinating. But now there's an extra line beneath it, half faded. Restaurata per Severve Ag, restored by Emperor Severus. Of course, another emperor taking credit. Romans loved restoring things. Buildings, roads, fountains. They'd swoop in, slap their name on the restoration, and act like they'd built the whole thing from scratch. You wonder how many of these roads were even original anymore, or just patchwork projects claimed by every emperor with a chisel and an image problem. You walk past a columned courtyard where a group of scribes are arguing loudly over a map. One of them holds a long scroll and keeps jabbing his stylus toward it while another shakes his head violently and points at the ground. You pick up a few words. Non haec via sacra est. This is not the sacred road, told you. You slip past, ignoring the debate, and notice a large inscribed stone sunk into the ground nearby. This one's angled like a modern-day directional sign. It reads, "Add capital to the capital. At last, a helpful sign." You sigh in relief until you turn and see two more stones nearby with the exact same inscription, each pointing in a different direction. Welcome to Rome, where even the roads to power are apparently subject to interpretation. This moment of classic Roman confusion isn't just historical trivia. It's a reflection of how the Roman world layered itself. Roads were reused, renamed, and recontextualized. Just like modern streets that shift names as they pass through neighborhoods, Roman roads adapted depending on who was in charge, who had money, and who built what. In fact, many roads were renamed multiple times. The same stretch might be Via Appia under one ruler, Via Augusta under another, and then casually referred to as the main road by locals who didn't care about formal titles. Some historians believe entire road names changed with the religion of the emperor, meaning what was once dedicated to Jupiter might suddenly honor Christ under Constantine. You round a curve and find yourself in a shaded portico. The stone beneath your feet is cooler now, and small candles flicker in alcoves. There's a sign carved into the wall, a short, choppy Latin message, Purge ad dextram, via sacra vetus. Go right. Old sacred road. Finally, a direction with some specificity, but also, you realize this means you've been on the wrong via sacra the whole time. You sigh and lean against a column, letting your body slump under the weight of ancient misinformation. Here's your quirky tidbit for the night. In Pompeii, archaeologists found graffiti along roads mocking incorrect signs, or poking fun at roads that go nowhere. One scrawl read, Go left if you wish to chase chickens, right if you wish to chase girls, straight if you seek your money. A local's version of Yelp reviews, basically. So yes, even in Roman times, people complained about road signs. You eventually decide to follow the old Via Sacra, which leads you down a slope into a quiet district filled with statues, each honoring someone who probably paid to be remembered. There's a gentle breeze now, and the chaotic noise fades behind you. This road is older, worn smoother, and oddly peaceful. The sign wasn't lying for once. But as you pass yet another milestone, its face scratched beyond recognition, you realize something funny. None of the markers on this road mention the name Via Sacra at all. No labels, no arrows, just wear and silence. Maybe this is what the old man meant back at the tavern. The real road isn't marked, it's felt. Still, you can't help but chuckle. The Romans built thousands of miles of roads, and yet sometimes the only reliable direction came from listening to old men and watching the flow of sandals. You look up at a faded wall and see one last sign, a hand-painted arrow, probably by a local kid or a very passive-aggressive neighbor. It says simply, "Not that way." Wise advice. You keep walking, trying not to overthink the fact that every Roman sign you've seen so far could be a prank, a power move, or just the ancient equivalent of someone misspelling your name at Starbucks. Your sandals scrape along the uneven road as it opens into a wide, bustling intersection, a quadrivium, the Roman four-way crossroad. Except this one's not helpful. Not at all. 4 roads meet here, all busy with carts and clanging hooves, and every single one has its own name posted on a carved stone pillar. They say Via Silvae, Via Silvar, Via De Silvis, Via Silvestris. You squint. They're all some version of Forest Road. Apparently someone couldn't decide whether to use the singular, plural, prepositional, or poetic form. It's the Latin equivalent of naming every road Main Street and expecting people to know which Main Street you mean. You glance around, hoping for context, and notice that none of these roads lead to an actual forest. One goes toward a bathhouse, another to a forum, another uphill to a military outpost, and the fourth, well, who knows? It just disappears between some shops selling olives and suspicious-smelling cheese. Historians still argue whether these naming redundancies were caused by bureaucratic laziness or were intentional, based on different purposes the road once served. Some believe that the overlap in names reflected the legal jurisdiction each road belonged to, kind of like saying, this is Forest Road under the governor's authority, and that one's Forest Road under the priest's. You decide to go with the road leading uphill. When in doubt, follow elevation. The air gets cooler and you can hear birds calling out in the trees above. A welcome sound, even if it's probably just crows plotting something. This route, surprisingly, has no milestones. None. Just blank stretches of road punctuated by the occasional heap of old bricks. You wonder if this was an unmarked auxiliary path, or maybe the milestones were stolen long ago to build someone's villa. That was a thing, by the way, recycling Roman road signs. You'd be amazed how many ancient milestones turned up embedded in medieval farmhouses or used as garden ornaments. But here's the weird part. Even without markers, you still pass dozens of symbols scratched into the rocks. Crudely carved arrows, boots, fish, even a tiny hand pointing downward. These weren't official signs, they were the ancient world's graffiti wayfinding system. Pilgrims, merchants, and maybe a bored centurion or two would chisel these marks to guide others, an informal navigation method more reliable than the empire's own. You trail your fingers along one of the boot carvings. The sole has tiny dots in it, like hobnails. Somebody really took the time. Maybe this was their personal stamp. I was here. I went that way. And sometimes that was all the help you got. You keep climbing, the trees begin to thicken around you, your breathing slows. It's not exhausting, just dreamlike. The road starts narrowing, bordered by broken columns and wildflowers. A small shrine sits on the side, covered in ivy and coins. You toss one in for luck, always a good idea when the signage is untrustworthy. That's when you see it, a weathered wooden board nailed to a dead tree. Division of Roads, Provincial District 4. You raise an eyebrow. Bureaucracy has entered the chat. The Romans, ever the administrators, divided their roads into districts, cursus publicus zones, with different sections managed by regional officials. That explains the inconsistent signage and varied milestones. Each province or even city-state maintained its portion, often with wildly different standards. So what looks like one continuous Roman road might actually be the stitched together work of 5 local offices, 3 egomaniacal governors, and one guy who just wanted his name on something. Quirky tidbit time. In one preserved Roman record, a governor filed a formal complaint to Rome because the local road maintenance crew kept carving their names larger than his on the signs. Imagine a feud over font size in stone. That's some top-tier passive aggression. Just as you're marveling at the absurdity, you reach a fork in the road, one path paved, another gravel, both descending into a foggy valley. There's a stone marker tilted sideways, and on it the barely readable words SCC Andariviem ER, a secondary road. You know that term. Secondary roads were Roman by design, but didn't carry the full imperial weight. They connected towns and estates, but weren't built to the same obsessive standards. No perfectly measured milestones, no triumphal arches, no emperor's name carved into every available surface. And that's when it hits you. This is the road most people used, not the grand highways on the marble maps, but these modest, unofficial detours. Most Romans didn't travel the glorious Via Appia. They took the other way, the one without a name or with 3 contradictory ones. You decide to take the gravel path. It's quieter. Crickets chirp in the bushes. The fog thickens, wrapping around you like a soft cloak. Your footsteps are slower now, softer. The road winds into a grove where statues crumble silently in the undergrowth, their faces long faded. You feel like you're walking through someone's memory. There's one last sign at the grove's edge, carved into a slab of black basalt, crooked and barely hanging onto its post. Via Nullibus. The road to nowhere. You blink. Is it a joke? A warning? A philosophical riddle? Historians have debated whether some signs like this were legitimate route names or just the work of sarcastic soldiers and jaded locals. Some even theorize that names like Via Nullibus were used to deter travelers from entering private or haunted routes, roads that led to ruined estates, ancient battlefields, or outlaw camps. But you're here for the confusion, so you follow it. The stones under your feet crackle as they grow older, smaller, more distant from their original purpose. And even though the sign said nowhere, the road feels peaceful, almost sacred, like maybe nowhere was always the point. You glance back once toward the intersection of the 4 forest roads. It already feels like another life. The road to nowhere hums beneath your feet with that quiet, ancient energy, like a lullaby carved into stone. It isn't grand. There are no statues of victorious emperors here, no triumphal arches or fountain-fed plazas, just the rhythmic crunch of gravel and the occasional hoot of an owl hidden somewhere in the trees above. You walk slowly now, not just because your feet are sore, but because this road feels delicate, like stepping through someone else's forgotten dream. The brush on either side thickens with tall grasses and olive trees, and up ahead you spot what looks like another signpost, crooked, moss-covered, and leaning like it's given up trying to stay relevant. You brush away the ivy. It says, Via Privata Q Lartives Cassius F. Private road of Quintus Lartius Cassius the Son, a private Roman road, not uncommon, but easy to overlook in the grand stories. These weren't state-sponsored or imperially maintained. They were commissioned by wealthy landowners, often leading from a villa to a public highway, or sometimes just winding around a huge estate so the owner could ride in circles, admiring their grapes. This one probably belonged to Cassius, some wealthy merchant or minor senator who wanted his own entrance to the main road, because, of course, status was everything. You can almost picture it. A smug Roman sipping watered-down wine, watching peasants from his balcony and pointing out his name carved on the milestone with all the subtlety of a neon sign. Historians still argue whether private roads like this had legal restrictions for public use. Some say that as long as they connected to a public road, people could use them freely. Others claim they were strictly patrolled and guarded, occasionally with angry dogs or, worse, bureaucrats. Either way, you keep walking, and that's when you see the milestone. Not a pillar this time, but a cube buried half in the soil like a forgotten dice. You lean in close, brushing away the dust. The inscription reads, Lartives Cassius iter fes edat ab apiam exic milia passium. Lartius Cassius made this road from his house to the Via Appia, 20,000 paces, a whole 20 Roman miles just to show off. That's roughly 18.5 modern miles. You can almost hear him boasting about it at a dinner party. Oh, you ride a rented chariot? I built my own road. You laugh softly, but the eerie part is there's no villa in sight. No ruins, no columns, just this road hugging the landscape, still leading somewhere, even after the estate it once served has crumbled to dust. And here's your quirky tidbit for tonight. Archaeologists have found private road markers deep in the countryside that end mid-field. No evidence of a destination, just a stretch of paved path that suddenly stops. Some think they were vanity projects never completed. Others believe the villas they served were destroyed so completely their memory vanished too. You reach another sign, this one small and buried low in the dirt. A different material. Not stone, but lead. That's odd. You bend down to read it. It says, Iter interdicti VM, passage forbidden. You glance around. There's no gate, no guard, no fence. Just a whisper in the air and a road that suddenly gets a bit darker, shaded by cypress trees and hunched over oaks. Now, that raises questions. Lead signs were rare but very real. Romans sometimes used them to mark cursed places or land involved in legal disputes. If this stretch of road had once passed through contested property, someone might have planted the sign to keep people off or to intimidate travelers with the suggestion of divine retribution. Historians still debate whether iter interdictum signs were enforced by actual law or if they were more like the ancient Roman version of a beware of dog sign, meant to make you think twice. You don't stop, though. You're in too deep now. Besides, you didn't come here for safety. The trees lean in closer, and you realize the path has subtly changed. The gravel grows finer. The edges are lined with sharp white stones, almost like teeth. You pass a row of statues, crumbling women holding jars. Their faces are worn away, but the jars remain smooth and untouched by time. One of the jars has a hole in it, just wide enough for a coin. You drop one in, and something shifts. A breeze, a whisper. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. Ahead, the path splits again. This time, there's no sign at all. Not a single inscription, no scratched boot print, no sarcastic graffiti. Just two directions, left into a thicket of wild figs and gnarled branches, or right toward open grass and a slope that shines with moonlight. You choose left, because why not? The ground gets softer. Dirt replaces gravel. You spot wheel ruts, deep ones, ancient but sharp, like they've been preserved under the dust. You imagine an ox cart bumping along here, maybe carrying amphorae of oil or the remains of a statue too broken to worship anymore. Suddenly you pass another marker, carved sloppily, barely legible. Via Sin Nomine, the road without a name. You grin. You've reached peak Roman signage absurdity, the literal nameless road. This one's real too. Historians have found records of unnamed roads, referred to simply as iter sin nomine, roads too small, too rural, or too short to be worth naming, yet they were recorded in travel logs and even mapped, sometimes just as dotted lines. The Romans documented everything, even the nothings. You rest your hand on the stone, it's warm, and you realize something. Even without names, even without signs, the road endures, just like the stories. You leave the nameless road behind, though part of you feels like it never really ends. The trees thin out and the breeze picks up, soft and dry, carrying the smell of time and old dust. The stars above have begun to cluster tighter, more visible now, like tiny road signs of their own, pointing the way across the sky. The path straightens. There's a low wall to your right now, mostly rubble with tufts of grass growing between the cracks. And then you see it. A new sign, clearly chiseled, probably by a more official hand. Via Tutellaris, the Guardian Road. You pause. That's a curious name. You run your fingers along the etched letters. Not faded. Not modern either. Somewhere in between, like it's been maintained. That's rare. Historians still argue whether names like Via Tutellaris referred to divine guardianship, perhaps tied to a nearby shrine or protective deity, or if it marked territory that was once under military or administrative surveillance. Some even think these roads earned the name after being made safer by patrols or repaired after being reclaimed from bandits. But nothing about this road screams safe. The grass along the edges is thick and chokes out the stones. Some paving blocks are gone entirely, leaving little ankle breaker gaps. The only thing that seems guardian-like is the presence of a squat, blocky statue further down, perhaps a tutelary deity or just an especially ugly mailbox. You approach it. It's a chunk of limestone, barely humanoid, with bulging eyes and something like a grin. Not quite friendly, not quite threatening, just there, watching. You pass it respectfully. It's not long before the road leads you toward a new kind of confusion. A double marker. Two signs side by side. One reads Via Praetoria, the other Via Militaris, which is odd because in most cases these terms were used interchangeably to refer to roads connected with military use. But here they're literally pointing in two directions. One path heads straight as a spear into a stretch of dense brush. The other curves uphill toward a collection of shadows that look suspiciously like abandoned outposts. You think back to the basics. Via Praetoria usually meant the main internal street within a military camp leading from the front gate. Via Militaris, though, could refer to an actual marching route, a path used to move troops or supply wagons. So, both military, but different contexts. And now they've been given physical paths, side by side, like rival siblings competing for relevance. You go left onto the Via Praetoria. It just sounds a little more contained. The road here is tighter or framed by old stone footings from what might have been tents or barracks. Crumbled remains of walls litter the landscape. As you walk, your feet crunch on a strange mix of pebbles and what might be crushed tiles. Maybe the path passed through an old fortress, one that was dismantled, brick by brick, by time and looters. Here comes your quirky tidbit. There are stories, half myth, half recorded fact, about old Roman forts being intentionally disassembled to keep them from falling into enemy hands. One soldier's diary describes breaking stone with tears as if he were demolishing a friend. Dramatic, yes, but so very Roman. You pass another sign, an inscription etched into the side of a rock. Exercise V8, traverse it. The 8th Legion passed this way. Now that's a flex. These weren't just navigational signs. They were a legacy, a breadcrumb trail of empire carved into the earth. Roman legions loved marking their journeys. You could trace entire campaigns just by following these inscriptions, scattered across Europe like the world's grumpiest travel blog. But here's something curious. Not far past the legion marker, you see a stone bench, not standard military issue, built right into the side of the road. Beside it, a basin. Rainwater fills it, and the edges are smoothed from years of use. A rest stop. Literally. Historians still debate whether roadside benches and basins like these were for travelers, soldiers, or local shepherds. Some claim they marked community efforts to support travelers, early hospitality. Others say they were built by wealthy patrons trying to curry favor with locals or gods. Either way, you sit down, your legs are grateful. It's quiet here, no more birds, just wine threading its fingers through the reeds. You get up and continue. Further on, the road widens, suspiciously so. It's over 12 feet across now, and the stones are thicker, newer. You spot deep gouges, ruts worn by heavy wheels over centuries. That's when you realize you've merged with another route. There's a new marker, this one different. It reads, Via Commercialis. Now that's a term you don't hear every day. Roman commercial roads weren't usually labeled so bluntly, but in practice, any road near a port, market, or trade hub became one. The deep ruts suggest it saw wagons, lots of them, likely hauling grain, pottery, or maybe that most valuable cargo of all, fish sauce. No joke. Garum, the legendary Roman condiment, was big business. Amphorae filled with it traveled hundreds of miles across the empire, making roads like these smell really weird on hot days. Here's your fun side note. Some roads even had nosing stones, raised edges to keep carts from sliding off under heavy loads. You see a couple here, still solid after all this time. Roman logistics at its finest. You walk past a crumbling merchant's house, the facade still marked with paint, faded Latin promising fine olives, cured meats, honest prices. You think, sure, I've heard that one before. The road finally starts sloping down again. You've been climbing hills and meandering through ancient intersections, but now there's a sense of descent, not in mood, but in structure. Roads often narrowed and straightened as they approach towns or river crossings, and right on cue, you spot a sign. It's metal this time, bronze, cracked, but shining faintly in the moonlight. Pons mud restaurate these anno domini si. You're at a bridge, or what's left of one. The mutilated bridge, restored in the year 342 AD. Quite the name. Pons Mutilus. Sounds more like a haunted gladiator than an engineering project. You wonder why it was mutilated in the first place. Earthquake? Sabotage? Poor budgeting? Historians still argue whether bridges like these were maintained continuously or only repaired in emergencies. Restoration dates often reflect fiscal panic rather than routine upkeep. If someone carved the date, it probably meant the repair was a big deal, or that they wanted credit for it before it collapsed again. You step onto it gently. The stones creak like old bones. The river below is shallow now, more like a stream, but once it probably raged. You cross it slowly. On the far side, a final marker. It simply reads, Iter perpeti VM. The journey continues. The words still echo behind you, Iter perpetuum, and for a moment it's like the road has whispered something sacred into your ear. The journey continues. How Roman, how inevitable, and how, honestly, a little exhausting. Still, your feet keep moving and the road seems to respond, shifting its shape again, as if it knows your body needs something easier now. The slope levels out, the gravel softens, and a new smell drifts toward you. Baked earth, citrus trees, maybe, yes, even a faint sweetness like wine-soaked figs left too long in the sun. But you're not walking into a party. You're approaching the outskirts of what might have once been a post station, a relay hub of the imperial cursus publicus, the Roman state postal system. You spot the sign before the structure, Mansio Flavia ex AB Roma. The Flavian post house, 10 miles from Rome. It's mostly rubble now, but the outline remains. Long rectangular stone foundations, wide enough for horse stables, and a small raised platform where messages or messengers once paused for breath. Mansiones were the Roman equivalent of state-sponsored motels for couriers, dignitaries, and military officials, official business only. If you were lucky and important, you could swap tired horses for fresh ones and maybe snag a quick meal or wash your feet. Here comes your mainstream historical fact. The cursus publicus was an extraordinary logistical system with routes stretching across the empire. Imperial messages could travel nearly 50 miles per day using relays, well before anything resembling a mail service existed in the rest of Europe. And yet, here's your fringe tidbit. Some scholars believe locals despise these stations. Not because of the noise, but because the state often commandeered animals and food from nearby villages to stock them. In fact, multiple Roman petitions complain about postal officials acting like tacksmen with whips. You step carefully through what remains of the post house. In one corner, you find a faded inscription. VTVS Iki C CT Nemo Cavit. The old horse fell here, and no one cared. Well, that's a bit of tragic workplace commentary from the ancient world. Beyond the station, the road splits again. Of course it does, but this time there are 3 signs. Via Silvana Forest Road. Via Fabiana, the Fabian Way. The way back. You stand there a minute, tilting your head. 3 roads, 3 names, each one pulling you in each different direction. You go with Via Silvana, because frankly, it sounds like the kind of place where druids and wolves hang out. And at this point, you're in the mood for a little mystery. The trees thicken almost immediately. The air changes, cooler, damper, pine-scented. The stones of the road are darker here, probably volcanic basalt. They glisten slightly with moss and runoff. The occasional toad watches you pass, blinking with Roman suspicion. And then, unexpectedly, you spot a shrine, half swallowed by ivy. It's a tiny square niche in the roadside wall, barely big enough for a loaf of bread. Inside sits a worn figurine. Could be Silvanus, god of woods and boundaries. Could also be a rock with ideas above its station. Historians still argue whether roadside shrines like this were built by individuals, local councils, or passing soldiers. Some may have marked sacred groves. Others could have been erected after accidents, as divine oopsie markers. You find a little offering bowl at the base, filled with dried seeds and a crumbling olive pit. You drop in a pebble just in case. Romans loved their roadside spirits, and frankly, you're not looking to be cursed over a bad attitude. The forest road winds on, flanked by tree roots that seem to grow through and around the paving stones like they're trying to reclaim the land. You spot a few more shrines, each more overgrown than the last. One has faint red paint still visible, possibly blood, probably wine. The Romans didn't always make that distinction clear. Then, as you curve around a slope, you stumble on something both baffling and hilarious. A road sign. A big one. Freshly restored, set up like a monument. It says ad nullem portat. It leads to nowhere. You laugh out loud. Some ancient official must have had a sense of humor or maybe a bad map. But it's real. There are actual Roman inscriptions that boil down to dead end. Sometimes the road was never finished or the town it served was abandoned. This one might have once led to a quarry or a village wiped out by time, tax collectors, or boredom. You sit on a rock nearby and take it in. The absurdity, the weirdness, the very Roman commitment to still naming and marking a road that now ends in undergrowth. Here's your debate du jour. Some archaeologists think these roads were meant to symbolically complete maps. Even if the road didn't go anywhere, having it on a chart made the empire look more connected. Others argue that planners had grand visions that never came to fruition, ghost roads built in anticipation of future expansion. A metaphor, maybe, for everything. You get up, brush the dirt from your legs, and follow the dead-end road anyway. Why not? It goes on longer than you expect, climbing gently until the forest clears and suddenly you're in open air again. High ground. A bluff, maybe. You look back down and see the path behind you, winding through olive groves and cypress, silhouetted in moonlight. And there it is, another milestone. Just one word this time, vidi. You see. You're not sure if it's a joke or wisdom or both. The word lingers in your brain like a whisper. Vidis. You see. You saw. Maybe you still don't know what you're looking at, but that's half the charm of wandering through the detours of ancient Rome. The road doesn't care if you're confused. It just keeps going, leaving you to catch up both physically and mentally. You leave the bluff, stepping back into the bend of the forest. The road beneath your feet shifts again, losing its polished basalt smoothness for something rougher, flat cobblestones worn uneven with time. But unlike other stretches, this one doesn't feel abandoned. Not entirely. The trees thin. You hear the soft clinking of what sounds like bells. And then just ahead you see movement. Flickers of color. Red, yellow, blue. Not ghosts, not tourists, but painted stones, set up like warning signs. One reads, Cave Lupos. Beware of wolves. It's a bit dramatic. You've seen more frogs than wolves tonight, but wolves weren't just literal threats in ancient Rome. They were symbols. Sacred to Mars, yes, but also feared. Stories of wolf attacks were often used as metaphors for political enemies, wildness, or instability. Historians still argue whether signs like these were used for spiritual warnings, regional superstitions, or actual wildlife concerns. You walk past another one. Cave Falsi Via Torres. Beware of false travelers. Now that's creepy. Like you're in the middle of a Roman horror movie where the road knows too much. Maybe these weren't literal warnings. Maybe they marked places where ambushes once happened, or where false travelers, thieves disguised as pilgrims or merchants, used to roam. Here's your fun side note. Roman road safety wasn't always guaranteed, especially in remote areas. That's why travelers often joined together in caravans or hired armed escorts. You have neither, but you do have sandals that are now 30% dust. Still, something strange happens here. You spot another milestone. It's not where you expect it. Instead, it's on the side of a tree. Someone, long ago, carved the words directly into the bark. MSX6R, Bonn 36 miles from Rome. If that's true, you've really wandered far. Or you've entered metaphor land where numbers become poetry. And just ahead, you hit the next landmark, a triple crossroads. Again, 3 weather-worn signs pointing in different directions. You squint to read them. Via Domitia, Via Incerta, Via Sanguinaria. Oof. That last one's a bit grim. Blood Road, you'll save that for when your flashlight dies. You go with Via Domitia because honestly, it's the only one with historical credentials. Fact time. Via Domitia was one of the earliest Roman roads in Gaul, completed in the late 2nd century BCE. So it connected Italy with what is now southern France, facilitating military control, trade, and importantly, wine distribution. If Caesar ever got drunk and yelled at anyone in Gaul, odds are he took the Domitia. But here's your quirky tidbit. Roman administrators often named roads after themselves. Domitius Ahenobarbus gets the credit for this one. The vanity wasn't even subtle. It's like slapping your Instagram handle on a sidewalk. You follow the path. It's broad here, flanked by olive trees and the remnants of what were once way stations. You pass several fallen columns and then something peculiar, a Roman mirror sign. A polished bronze disc set into stone reflecting moonlight, not for vanity. These were signal markers, used to catch sunlight during the day and signal distant outposts, sort of a low-tech Roman flashlight Morse code. Scholars debate whether these were part of military communication systems or just cleverly placed art. You pass your reflection in the disc. You look dusty, but noble. Then you stumble across something downright weird. A painted wall beside the road covered in faded writing and little illustrations of ships, dice, and, of all things, chickens. It looks like graffiti, because it is. Romans were big fans of roadside graffiti. Not just crude jokes, but also ads, protests, and traveler journals. One famous piece of wall art near Pompeii reads, "Viator non te dormi." Traveler, don't fall asleep. You look at your feet. Good advice. Except that's kind of what this whole story is about, right? You move on. The road narrows slightly and you spot something even more baffling. A bilingual road sign written in Latin and Greek. Odos Filiae Via Amicitiae, the road of friendship. This section of the road might have been part of a cultural or religious pilgrimage route. Romans often absorbed local deities and festivals into their state religion, which meant certain roads were named for feelings or virtues to give the impression of unity. Whether that actually worked is, well, another open debate. You pause beneath a tree heavy with pomegranates. Your feet ache, your shoulders sag. The road of friendship is lovely, but so is sitting down. And there, as if summoned by your thought, is a bench again, a newer one, not Roman, wooden, carved with a modern hand. On the seat, a single word, continuare, to keep going. That's either encouragement or mockery. You sit. The stars peek through the canopy. You think about all the signs you've seen tonight. Serious ones, sarcastic ones, deeply unhelpful ones. You wonder how many travelers before you got lost here, or how many found something worth the wandering. There's another sign nailed to the tree beside the bench, barely visible, hand-painted. Nolite timere viam stultam. Don't be afraid of the foolish road. And maybe that's the most Roman advice of all. You rise from the bench reluctantly, brushing your palms along the carved word, continuare. Keep going. The road is starting to feel more like a conversation partner than a path now. One with a dry sense of humor, lots of ancient references, and a suspicious tendency to put benches only when you're on the verge of collapse. You step forward, your sandals slapping softly against the worn stones. The air is warmer again, the trees opening slightly, and your ears catch a strange sound. Faint, metallic, almost like music. Or is it wind chimes? No, it's too rhythmic for that. You follow it, curiosity tugging you forward like a polite Roman usher. Around a bend, you see the source, a cluster of milestones, but this time they've been arranged in a circle, like a Roman version of Stonehenge. Most are shattered, leaning, or half buried in grass, but together they give the impression of a forum of ghosts, standing in silent debate. Each one is carved with names, governors, legates, emperors, some with full titles like Imperator Caesar Divi Filius Augustus, others more modest, Lucius Bridge Repairer. One bears nothing but a carved foot. You stare at that one a while. Did someone lose a bet, or was it meant to mark a journey by foot? Mainstream historical fact time, Roman milestones, or milliaria, weren't just distance markers. They were public declarations of imperial reach and engineering prowess. Every new milestone was a subtle flex. Look what Rome built, look how far it stretches. But here's your quirky tidbit. Some milestones had curse inscriptions to deter vandalism. One famously read, Cavet ne istum viola veritas, malum habetis. Beware, do not violate this, you'll have bad luck. A classic Roman approach, equal parts civic order and spooky threat. You wander into the circle and find a newer stone in the center, smooth, clearly added in modern times. Someone's attempt to commemorate all this ancient weirdness. On it is a riddle. Quae est via quae deus nemo erat? What is the road on which no one gets lost? You grin. Philosophical graffiti. The kind that implies the answer is either death or home, depending on your mood. But enough riddles. The road resumes, and so do you. It starts to slope downward now, gently winding into a valley flanked by crumbling aqueduct arches. The moonlight plays off the stone, throwing long shadows that look almost like marching centurions. Or maybe it's your eye of eyes tricking you again. The road here has a change in surface. Gone is the polished basalt. Instead, it's patched with terracotta tiles, some cracked, many stamped with faint designs. You kneel to inspect one and see the outline of a fish. Not exactly standard issue. Historians still argue whether these fish tile segments were official detours built near Christian settlements or just remnants of water stations or markets that had religious overlap. You'd believe either theory. The road feels different here, quieter, somehow. As you rise, something even more bizarre catches your eye. A sign painted onto the wall of an old aqueduct base. Red letters, large and slightly crooked. Solus, you are not alone. You freeze for a moment. It's not creepy. Well, not entirely. It's comforting in that the road is watching you sort of way, but also uncanny. You keep moving, glancing behind you once or twice, just to be sure. Soon, you pass an open field dotted with marble fragments, columns toppled like pickup sticks, and in the middle stands the remains of a roadside altar. This one's still scorched by old flame, probably used for sacrifices, though hopefully of the non-human kind. A Latin inscription remains legible, Genio loci, tibi gratias agimus. To the spirit of the place, we give thanks. Romans believed in genius loci, the protective spirit of a location, and not just temples or cities, even roads could have one. The soul of the path, if you like. You start to feel like maybe that spirit's been walking beside you all night. Quirky note, some roadside spirits were gendered. You could travel one stretch watched over by a male genius, only to pass into the domain of a neighboring mater viarum, a sort of road mom who probably handed out ghostly snacks and unsolicited advice. The slope steepens again and your knees make that ancient creaking noise they've perfected. You descend into what appears to be a trade village, or what's left of it, just low walls, a cracked cistern, and a stone slab etched with Macellum Romanum, Roman market. You pause beside a trough filled with moonlit rainwater. A sign above it says, "Don't drink." You take its advice. Roman plumbing wasn't always famous for health. Lead pipes, remember? Still, you splash your face. It's cold, sharp, keeps your eyelids from sagging shut. You press onward. Suddenly, another intersection, but this one is a loop, a literal circle of paved road where all options just spiral back to where you started. In the center, a final sign. Itinera infinita, infinite roads. You walk the loop once, twice. You could keep walking it forever like some ancient version of Google Maps stuck recalculating. But then you see it, a small archway of stone almost hidden behind a tumble of ivy. No sign, no Latin, just an empty gap. You walk through it. The stones beneath your feet change texture again, worn smoother, darker, older, and ahead of you, for the first time, you see light, not moonlight, but firelight, a glow bouncing off walls. You're entering the remains of a tunnel, one of Rome's many mountain passes drilled through hills to make trade easier. They didn't go over obstacles if they could blast through them. Very on brand. You pass into shadow, the air cooler now. Your fingers graze the tunnel wall. Graffiti again. Some familiar. Roma in aeternum. Rome forever. Others strange. Redesne olim? Will you return one day? You smile. Even the walls here want to know if you'll come back. Well, road. That depends on where you're taking me. The tunnel breathes, or so it feels. Cool air drifts against your face like the exhale of something ancient, something that's been holding its breath for centuries, waiting for someone like you to wander in with tired feet and questionable choices. The walls glisten with moisture, and you trail your fingers along damp stone. You wonder how many others touch this exact curve of rock. Legionaries on forced marches? Priests on pilgrimage? A Roman kid named Gaius chasing after his runaway goat? All equally possible. The tunnel curves gently left, then right. It's not pitch black. Far ahead, you spot a flicker of torchlight. Real or imagined, it's enough to keep you walking. About 50 paces in, you reach a carved recess in the wall. A sign etched roughly, Silentium placet Deus. Silence pleases the gods. The message is clear. Hush, mortal. You're in sacred territory now. Mainstream history tells us Roman tunnels often doubled as sacred transitions, spaces where one passed from one kind of land to another, mountain to valley, pagan to holy, life to death. Even Roman funerary roads sometimes tunneled beneath earth, symbolic of the underworld journey. Some scholars argue these signs were psychological cues, meant to induce awe and fear, the kind of fear that made you behave yourself. You move quietly now, footsteps muffled. Around another bend, the walls suddenly widen, opening into a circular chamber, roughly 10 meters across. In the center, on a raised dais, rests what looks like a stone compass, with Latin inscriptions pointing in four directions: Auster, south; Septentrio, north; Oriens, east; Ocid, west. And dead center, in square capitals, Seque viam stultorum. Follow the road of fools. You burst out laughing. Quietly. It's fitting. You, a tired modern-day wanderer in socks that have seen better days, standing in a Roman joke chamber, being told to keep following foolishness like it's sacred wisdom. And maybe it is. You step out of the chamber and continue down the tunnel, which eventually slopes upward. As you walk, more signs appear, scratched into stone or painted in long faded red. Nihil timendum est praeter nihil. Nothing is to be feared except nothing. Another, viator fatigatus ibi requiescit. Here the weary traveler may rest. And then, emerging from the tunnel like a fish breaching the surface, you find yourself back in moonlight. You've exited into what looks like a sunken way station, the roof gone, the walls knee-high in some places, chest-high in others. You recognize it immediately. A mantia, a Roman rest stop for imperial couriers and important travelers. These were scattered across the empire like little hotel lobbies with donkey parking. One wall bears a mural, almost completely weathered away, but you can still make out a drawing of a road winding through mountains flanked by signs with odd shapes, geometric, like octagons and triangles. One shows a lion asleep on top of a milestone. Beneath it, non omnia significat significa. Not all signs are signs. Classic. Here's your quirky tidbit. Archaeologists discovered a Moncio in Gaul that had graffiti from 3 different centuries, left by Roman administrators, then late imperial soldiers, then finally Christian pilgrims. It was like a guest book filled with layered voices from people who had no idea they'd be sharing the same stop centuries apart. You look around, no beds, no vending machines, but a stone bench remains. There's also a well in the corner, covered now by a mesh of vines and the faint sound of dripping water echoing inside. A metal cup is chained to the edge. Next to it on a plaque, Pots bibere, fortas, you can drink, maybe. You decide not to test Roman plumbing roulette again. The road resumes at the edge of the station, but this time it's different. It glows. Well, not literally, but the basalt here is smoother than anything you've walked on before. It's been worn into a sheen, catching just enough moonlight to resemble molten obsidian. And every few meters, symbols have been etched between the stones. Not words, but pictograms. A hand, a wheel, a fish, a key. This isn't your average imperial trade road. This is a ritual path, a segment scholars now believe may have connected older pre-Roman sites. The Romans, never ones to waste a perfectly good infrastructure layout built directly over it. Some debate whether they understood the original symbolism or simply co-opted it to add spiritual clout. One popular fringe theory even suggests these roads were used during equinoxes, when priests would follow the symbols in order to perform regional blessings. You, however, are not a priest, just someone who took a left turn into historical madness. Halfway down the shining path, you spot another milestone. Except this one isn't upright, it's lying flat, covered in moss. You brush it off and read the inscription, Via nunc te ducit. Now the road leads you, which frankly is what you were hoping for all along. You keep walking. The pictograms grow stranger. One looks like an eye with wings, another a spiral inside a square. Probably early religious symbols or ancient graffiti artists having a good laugh. You start to notice that every time you pass one of these images, the wind changes slightly. You can't explain it. The air feels charged, like you're walking through a network of old intentions, like footsteps left behind by people who believed in the magic of stones and distance. Finally, you reach a stone slab with no images, just one single elegant Latin word carved into its surface, expecta. Wait, you pause because you're obedient like that, and also curious. A breeze picks up. Distant thunder rolls somewhere beyond the hills, and for a moment you could swear you hear footsteps behind you, but when you turn, there's nothing. Just the road, quiet as ever, still whispering, keep going. Fools welcome. You glance one last time at the slab that told you to wait. Expecta. But the road ahead now hums with a sort of subtle magnetism, like a story pulling its reader toward the next chapter. You can almost feel the stones underfoot nudging you along. And really, you've come too far to turn back now. Not that you ever knew where you started, or when. The path narrows here, flanked by short hedges and a line of perfectly placed white stones. You squint. No, not white stones. Not human. Thankfully, they're animal skulls, bleached and arranged with unsettling symmetry. Cow, goat, bird, possibly? Crocodile? Wait, was that a crocodile skull? You stop, you stare, you consider the odds. Fringe tidbit incoming. While actual crocodile skulls on Roman roads are unlikely, there is archaeological evidence that exotic animal remains, particularly from gladiatorial arenas and imported menageries, were sometimes buried or symbolically placed in shrines along well-traveled routes, particularly during Saturnalia or other festivals when rules and reality went on vacation. You pass the skulls like a polite guest ignoring weird wallpaper, and suddenly, the landscape opens wide. To your right, a wide, crumbling amphitheater. But this one isn't for sport. It's clearly too small and lacks the brutal grandeur of the Colosseum. Instead, it seems made for speech. A semicircle of seats faces a raised platform, and behind the platform, a wall covered in Latin quotations, carved deeply. Each quote is a fragment of travel wisdom, a kind of Roman TED Talk carved in stone. One reads, Viam ambula non victoriam pete. Walk the road, don't seek the victory. Another, errare humanum est iterare divinum. To err is human, to journey is divine. You laugh softly. Somewhere, a Roman poet is fist-pumping his ghostly audience. A low stone sign near the speaker's platform reads, Disputatio viatorum, the traveler's debate. Mainstream history supports this one. In various Roman towns, travelers would gather at roadside assembly spots, particularly during busy market seasons or religious festivals, to exchange news, tell stories, and occasionally hurl vegetables at each other in intellectual disagreement. Not all of Rome was marble and stoicism. Some of it was sass and side-eye. You climb the podium and stand under the quotes. It's tempting to deliver your own dramatic monologue to the invisible audience. Instead, you whisper, I'm just here for the signs. A gust of wind rustles the grass around the seats. You take that as applause and bow, because honestly, when else are you going to get a standing ovation from ghosts? Continuing onward, you soon enter what appears to be a district of abandoned domus villas. Mansions once belonging to Rome's upper crust, now in ruin. One still has mosaic flooring intact, faded but readable. The mosaic depicts a road splitting in two. One side leads to a lion's den, the other to a banquet. Between the forks, a traveler stands shrugging, looking just as confused as you probably do now. Underneath it, Quo vies rectior? Which road is more right? Historians still argue whether this was metaphorical art or an early game of choose-your-own-adventure. Some interpret it as a visual pun on moral choice. Others believe it marked a literal decision point on the traveler's route, either toward military hardship or civil luxury. You skip the lion path, because obviously. Passing the villas, you notice strange, small pedestals, waist-high every 50 steps or so. Some are broken. Others hold miniature statues, gods, animals, or abstract shapes. One has a figure with multiple heads spinning like a weather vane. Another just holds a hand clutching a scroll. A sign beside one reads, Symbola viarum. The symbols of the roads. This section of Roman road seems to have served as an educational walk, a kind of outdoor museum for civic values or local mythology. Maybe it was used to train young students in reading symbols and interpreting state messages. It could also have been a walking test for initiates into a priesthood or a ceremonial route for local festivals. Whatever its purpose, it feels like a game. Every sign here dares you to interpret it. Every statue is a riddle you're probably failing to solve. But that's okay. The road seems to like it when you're confused. You stop at one pedestal that holds a single object, a Roman road sign. A literal one this time, not stone or mosaic. It's cast in bronze, dented and dark with time, but still legible. Roma, DCXI Milia Pao 791,000 steps, not miles. Not leagues. Steps. You blink. Mainstream fact, while the Romans typically measured roads in milia passum, 1,000 paces, they occasionally recorded step counts for spiritual pilgrimages or symbolic purposes. For example, some devout travelers would count individual steps as a meditative act, especially during penitential journeys. Suddenly, your smartwatch doesn't seem so modern. You try to calculate how many steps you've taken tonight. You give up. You just know it's been a lot. Just past the bronze sign, the road dips slightly and brings you to something entirely unexpected. A statue of a snail, life-sized, not heroic or exaggerated, just a very chill snail. At its base, festina lent, make haste slowly. That old Roman oxymoron of ambition and patience, carved into stone and snail. You reach out and pat the snail's back. It's cold, comforting. Then the road curves again, left then right, like a long exhale, and the stars above seem to open wider. You're out of the hedges now. The path widens into an open plain, stone tiles broken and grass strewn, but still there, still whispering. You see another sign, just one word, Semper. Always, you smile, because that's what this road is, isn't it? Ancient, chaotic, confusing, but always there, waiting. The wide, grass-covered plain stretches like a sea of silence before you, the road laid across it like a long, forgotten spine. You place your feet carefully on the still visible stones, some half-sunk, some missing altogether, but all stubbornly refusing to disappear. The stars overhead seem clearer now, like they're leaning in to watch. No trees block your view. No ruins clutter the horizon. Just you, this endless Roman road, and whatever mischief the signs are up to next. After maybe 5 minutes of walking, you spot it. A thin, crooked column in the distance. As you approach, it turns out not to be a milestone, but rather a twisted stack of signs, all layered on top of one another, like someone tried to build a bureaucratic totem pole. Each sign points in a different direction, each bears a different message, and none of them agree. Rome, 620 miles. Rome, 712 miles. Rome, 690 miles. Rome. Your brain starts to short circuit. Either Rome moves a lot, or this place was designed specifically to ruin the careers of ancient GPS designers. Here's your mainstream fact. While Roman roads were astonishingly accurate for the time, especially thanks to their use of Groma surveying tools, there were still occasional errors and local variances. Some milestones reported different distances, depending on whether they measured from the city gates, the forum, or the local temple. And let's not even get started on what happened when provinces tried to fudge those numbers for funding. As for this mess of signs, historians still argue whether this was satire or sabotage. One theory is that it marked a neutral border zone between squabbling municipalities, each of which insisted it had the best direct route to Rome. Another theory, it was part of a roadside attraction, designed to mess with traders and get them to stop at the nearby tavern for directions and wine. You pause and look around. Sure enough, not far beyond the twisted post is the skeletal remains of what could have been a taberna, a Roman roadside inn. The roof's long gone, and only one wall remains upright, but the foundation outlines small rooms, thus a central fire pit, and, you guessed it, a bar counter. Painted across the surviving wall, half gone with time and rain, is a mural of a drunken satyr dancing on top of a cart. Above him, the words, "Dubius est itinere senictium." Every journey begins in confusion. You chuckle. Finally, a sign you actually understand. Inside what's left of the taberna, you find a few stone stools and an old oven made of brick and clay. There's also something unexpected, a narrow hallway leading underground. You hesitate. The last tunnel you entered had some things to say, but curiosity wins. Again, down the short steps you go into a cellar lined with amphora. Clay storage vessels lean haphazardly against the walls, many still sealed with wax. You lift one, surprisingly heavy. You knock gently, liquid sloshes inside. A faded note carved into the stone above the shelves reads, "Vini cantant," the wines sing. You decide not to open one. Ancient Roman wine could taste like raisins and seawater, or worse, actual seawater, as they occasionally added brine for flavor. Cheers to that. A side chamber branches off from the cellar, bare except for a stone bench and a mosaic on the floor. The mosaic depicts a familiar image, a twisting road flanked with signs and a cloaked traveler shrugging beneath the stars. Beneath him in gold tiles, "Viam invenies a facies." You will find a way, or make one. Chills. Back above ground, the night has shifted. The stars seem lower now, like they're crouching. The air is warmer, strangely still. Crickets chirp lazily like they're on Roman Union hours. The road begins to climb again, this time into rocky highlands. You pass a series of short carved markers shaped like arrows, but instead of names or numbers, each arrow bears a weather symbol. One with clouds, another with sun rays, one with a spiral of wind, and finally one with lightning bolts. This section is believed to have been a meteorological stretch maintained by early Roman scientists who observed and logged changes in wind and temperature. Think of it as a primitive weather station disguised as road art. Quirky tidbit. The Romans weren't meteorologists in the modern sense, but they had complex systems of omens tied to weather, especially when it came to military planning and agriculture. A thunderstorm on the wrong day could cancel an entire campaign or spark one. You keep climbing, the air gets thinner, the road rougher. Finally, the path plateaus into a narrow ridge where it splits right and left, hugging the hillside, and there they are, two signs, twin posts. Left path, Salus, safety. Right path, Gloria, glory. Now that's just rude. Historians still debate whether this particular fork ever truly existed. Some claim the Salus versus Gloria fork is more literary metaphor than archaeological reality, a kind of mythologized waypoint inserted into Roman lore to inspire or caution later travelers. Others believe it was a military junction where soldiers decided between a secure supply road or a risky shortcut. You're not in a mood for shortcuts tonight. You've earned your glory by simply surviving this walk, so you choose Salus. Left it is. The path is smoother here, better maintained. You pass a few broken posts marked Cura Viator. Take care, traveler. The kind of warning you'd expect on slippery roads or near ravines. You realize something. This road knows you now. It's stopped trying to impress or confuse. It's just guiding. You round a bend and find an archway built into the hillside. No doors, no guards, just an arch with one word chiseled across the top. Return. Return to what? To where? You duck under the arch into the cool silence beyond, and for the first time in hours, you feel calm, as if this is the halfway point, the axis of the journey, the moment when the signs stop asking who you are and start answering back. You take a deep breath and keep walking. Beyond the arch marked Rede, the world softens. The road no longer scrapes and climbs, it glides. The stones are wider, smoother, and warmer underfoot, as if recently touched by sunlight, though the stars above say otherwise. They twinkle lazily as if watching a familiar story unfold for the 1000th time. The first thing you notice is the silence. Not emptiness, but deliberate quiet. The kind of hush you'd hear in a grand library or deep underwater. Every footstep feels louder than it should. You begin to walk more carefully, toe first, like the ground might be listening. Then you see the next sign. It's small, barely a handspan, and built into the stone itself. Sentir. To feel. There's no direction, no warning, no distance, just the command. Feel. You obey, partly out of habit by now. You slow down, really noticing the way the air smells faintly of thyme and warm dirt. You feel the rough hem of your tunic. How did you even get into Roman clothes? Brush against your knee. You become hyper-aware of the faint pressure of your heartbeat in your ears. And that's when you hear it. Music. Not from any visible source. Not strings or flutes. Just resonance. A low hum that rides the wind, curling around your ankles like smoke. You follow it around a gentle bend and nearly stumble. There, on the side of the road, is a raised platform of marble with a strange contraption atop it. A collection of stone bowls of varying sizes, each partially filled with water, and each tuned, apparently, to catch the wind and ring like a bell when the breeze passes just right. This is an Aeolian fountain, a rare Roman invention sometimes placed near temples or sacred rest stops. The idea was simple. When the gods wanted to speak, they would do so through wind and water. Some scholars argue these were early sound sculptures used in rituals or meditative practices. Fringe tidbit: one preserved example in Campania was said to have created tones so pure that locals believed it was the voice of a nymph who had turned herself into stone to escape a talkative satyr. Whether that's myth or metaphor for introverts, we'll never know. You sit by the sculpture a moment and let it sing to you. One high note, two low notes, then silence. Back on the road again, the scenery begins to change. The trees return, but they're sparse, tall, and symmetrical, planted with intention. You count the spacing. Every 11 steps, a tree. You test it 5 times. The same, a grove designed to soothe the traveler's eye. You're not just walking anymore, you're being lulled. Another sign soon appears, carved vertically into a tree trunk: Tempus Tacitus. Time is quiet. That tracks. You've no idea how long you've been walking. Hours, days, centuries. A short distance later, you find something stranger. A sundial, carved into a flat rock slab facing east. But instead of numerals, it marks only emotions. Sparrow, Letitia, Jumor, fear, desperatio, despair. Spes, hope again, but subtly different. And at the center, nulla hora, no hour. You stand above it. Your shadow lands cleanly on spes, that second hope, the quieter one. The kind that doesn't sing but hums beneath your ribs. Historians still argue whether this was a real way station or just decorative surrealism. Some believe it was created by a group of Stoic philosophers who briefly turned this stretch of road into a walking meditation zone, where travelers were encouraged to face their inner storms before moving on. Others think it was just a very pretentious rest stop. Whatever it was, it slows your pace, forces you to reflect. What are you doing here? Why does the road feel alive? And what in Jupiter's name is that ahead? Because, yes, something's ahead, something glowing. At first, it looks like a lantern, but as you draw closer, it becomes clear. It's not light, it's reflected fire. You arrive at a small square courtyard with a fire pit in the center. It's surrounded by 4 statues, one on each corner. Each statue is holding a sign. Their arms are outstretched like crossing guards. One reads, one equa, an Ventus, and the last, terra. Fire, water, wind, earth. You're standing in a Roman shrine to the elements. Mainstream historians document several such places across the empire, elemental tetrarchies where each natural force was personified and honored. Soldiers, in particular, would visit these to leave offerings before campaigns, especially those crossing difficult terrain. Fire for warmth, water for safe travel. Wind for speed, earth for strength. You sit by the fire, noticing it gives off no heat. The flames are silent, still, almost ceremonial. There's a small inscription carved into the base of the fire pit. All things flow. Back on your feet, you spot yet another road marker beyond the shrine, this one nearly buried in moss. You wipe it clean. It simply says, utter perjure. Keep going, so you do. The road feels softer now, not physically, but emotionally. Like it's not testing you anymore, it's walking with you. You reach a section lined with standing stones. Each is different, some shaped like shields, others like masks, others like tablets. They seem custom made, like memorials. And they are. Each one bears a name, chiseled deep: Marcus of the Northern Front, Lucilla, who knew the stars, Gaius, the tireless messenger, a traveler unknown but true. A series of roadside dedications, almost like Roman gravestones. But not necessarily for the dead, more like a hall of honor. Fringe theory suggests this was a commemorative section known as Via Memor, the Remembering Road. possibly established by a local legion to honor soldiers, messengers, or explorers who had completed particularly long or dangerous journeys. You walk between the stones like a guest in a silent museum, and at the end of the lane, a final sign waits. Meruisti. You have earned this. You stand quietly for a moment, no fanfare, no crowd, just you, the road, the stars, and the soft crunch of your next step. The path ahead becomes narrower now, drawing inward like a whisper. You're moving not towards something, but into something, like the road is curling around your thoughts. No signs for a while, just the sound of your own breathing and the occasional rustle of wind brushing through the leaves. Then you notice the walls. On either side of the road rise stone embankments, each carved into smooth panels that feel strangely deliberate, like gallery walls. You walk past them slowly, and sure enough, tiny inscriptions start to appear. They're not distances, not place names, not gods. They're quotes. The first one reads, Si via est ardua, melior erit finis. If the road is hard, the end will be better. You smirk a little. Clearly this wall knows who it's dealing with. Another few steps and a second inscription catches your eye, Errando Dissimus. We learn by wandering. It's starting to feel less like a road and more like therapy by Latin proverb. Historians believe some Roman roads, especially those leading to philosophical schools or pilgrimage sites, may have featured carved wisdoms along the way. The idea was that travel wasn't just movement, but mental preparation, a way to slowly unpack the soul while the body moved forward. Fringe theory. One scholar once claimed this stretch was a stoic mile, meant to offer a conversation with silence. Romans loved putting philosophy right into the infrastructure, like someone etching Marcus Aurelius quotes onto your favorite hiking trail. A third inscription appears, this one much larger. Qui tacet intelligit. Who is silent understands. You pause. It feels personal somehow. Like the road is asking you to stop looking for meaning and just walk. So you do. The walls start to recede. You emerge into a wide clearing and sing it, and the stars open above you like a vaulted dome. But this isn't the ordinary night sky anymore. No, the constellations have shifted. You blink. Once, twice, and then you see them. Not the usual Greek heroes or Roman beasts, but entirely different star shapes. Objects. A cartwheel. A stylus. A scroll. A gladius. Each constellation has been carefully reconstructed using embedded gemstones in the low hilltops surrounding the clearing. Tiny reflective markers set into the rocks to mimic starlight. From here, under the right moonlight, the effect is astonishing. A human history in the sky. This is known as the human zodiac, believed by some to have been developed in late imperial times when myth began to blend with philosophy and science. Instead of gods or monsters, these constellations celebrated human invention. There's limited archaeological evidence for this theory, but some partially preserved star maps found near Hadrian's Wall suggest something very similar. And here it is, laid out like a private planetarium just for you. You take a seat on a cool boulder and look up. The stylus sparkles faintly. The scroll flickers. The wheel turns, just barely if you squint. A soft hum rises again like the wind breathing through reeds. Not music, not exactly. Just the road reminding you it's still awake. You rise and continue. Just ahead is a small raised slab of marble, and on it sits a single unlit oil lamp. Next to it, another inscription, In te ipso lux, the light is in you. You check the lamp, empty, cold. You step past it, wondering what kind of weirdly motivational speaker lived out here, and almost miss the next sign, quies, rest. Oh, you hadn't realized how tired you were. In a tucked away alcove to the left, there's a small stone bench nestled between two flowering bushes. The flowers are unfamiliar, long, star-shaped, the kind of thing that probably glowed under moonlight if you looked at them long enough. You sit. Everything slows, even your thoughts. This stretch of road might have been a designated resting station or mansio quieta set far from taverns and markets. Some were built for messengers to pause and reflect, not just to nap. Mental clarity was prized among Roman military scouts, especially those carrying orders over long distances. Fringe tidbit, there are reports of mansions where dreams were recorded. That's right, dream logs. Some believe certain rest stops were located in places thought to invoke prophetic sleep, a form of ancient roadside incubation. You don't fall asleep exactly, just hover for a bit, and then something nudges you. Not a person, not an animal, just the air, like it leaned forward and said, "Hey, time to go." You rise again, and ahead you see something curious, a bridge. But there's no river, no ravine, no reason. Just a perfectly functional stone arch bridge, suspended over flat ground, and above it, a sign carved into the keystone.
Trains here. To cross.
Well, okay, you cross, and nothing happens, but everything changes. The wind shifts, the air gets warmer, the crickets fall silent, a new smell rises, baked bread and old parchment. The signs begin to return. The first, domum non eas, not a home. Not yet, anyway. You follow the curve of the road and spot something shimmering in the distance. It takes you a minute, but it resolves into the shape of a gate, tall, wide, with iron and bronze details. Above the gate is a massive sign, easily the most ornate so far. It reads, Via Scriptorum, the road of the scribes. You step through, and suddenly the road is lined with tablets, scrolls, chalkboards, graffiti walls. Every surface carries writing, some neat, some wild, some carved in haste, some painted in care. Love letters scratched in charcoal, war reports stamped in wax, recipes, spells, lists of debts, lists of dreams. It's chaotic, beautiful, and eerily modern, like wandering through the internet, but scrawled on limestone. Mainstream fact, the Romans wrote everywhere, not just in libraries, but on walls, gas monuments, bathhouse stalls. One scholar called it the graffiti verse. Entire conversations happened across years in the margins of taverns and arches. You read one final line as you pass under an old wooden beam. Omnia verba remanent. All words remain. You touch the beam and keep walking. The script-filled walls begin to thin out as you leave the road of the scribes behind. The stone beneath your feet changes again, less polished, more pitted, like volcanic rock. It crunches a little louder, and the rhythm of your steps sounds like the ticking of a slow, ancient clock. The road is getting older. You can feel it in your knees and in the silence. You start to notice that the signs are now rarer, but somehow more deliberate, as if every single word left here has to count. You pass one on a crumbling milestone, just barely legible. Vetustus non oblitus. The ancient is not forgotten. That tracks. Everything around you feels like a ruin that's still alive. The trees here are thicker, gnarled, with bark like puzzle pieces. You spot carvings half covered by moss, spirals, animal shapes, a faint outline of what might be a chariot wheel. Even the moss seems to grow with reverence. You walk past a raised slab, a former altar maybe, and see a small indentation in the shape of a human hand. Out of curiosity, you press your own hand into it. It fits disturbingly well. No lights flicker, no hidden doors open, but you feel something, a pulse under the stone, or maybe just your own heartbeat echoing. Fringe historians suggest this part of the road was once part of a prehistoric route, later paved over by the Romans. They didn't invent the roads from scratch, after all. Many were built on much older tracks made by tribal peoples, traders, and yes, even migrating animals. You're walking over layers of footsteps, some over 1,000 years apart. And then the fog appears. It rolls in suddenly, thick and syrupy, the kind of fog that muffles sound and turns even nearby shapes into uncertain shadows. You reach for the next sign, brushing away condensation to reveal certum. Uncertainty. Fitting. You keep walking, even though you can barely see a few feet ahead. The fog eats your footsteps before they can echo. You try to listen for birds, bugs, anything, but the world has gone blank. Then, just when you begin to wonder if you'll ever see another sign, you find one etched into the ground itself. Nescis quid veniet. You do not know what comes. You sit with that for a moment. This fog might have been literal or symbolic, or both. Historical records from the Appian Way note that certain highland stretches were famous for their sudden, total whiteouts. Travel journals mention entire caravans delayed for days, animals refusing to walk, torches useless. But fog is also metaphor. It was used in Roman drama and literature to represent fate, the future, even the boundaries between the worlds of the living and the dead. Historians still argue whether this stretch of the road had religious significance. Some claim it was a passage for funerary processions, given the number of ancient tombs along nearby cliffs. Others believe the fog was just a nice side effect of bad elevation planning. Either way, you walk through it like a thought slowly forming. Eventually, the fog thins. You spot a faint glow ahead and your eyes adjust to firelight. You approach a ring of torches surrounding an old Roman mile marker, taller than the rest. It reads, Mille passus, 1,000 paces. You've hit a Roman mile. Not the start, not the end, just one of many, many stones placed every 1,000 paces across the empire. Some were numbered, some weren't, but all of them meant the same thing. You're getting there. A smaller sign sits beside it, semper in itinere, always on the journey. You keep walking, warmed slightly by the firelight. Ahead, the landscape changes again. You're no longer on a road, but a kind of raised corridor, flanked on either side by low, dry stone walls. Beyond them, what looks like farmland, or what used to be. Overgrown vineyards, collapsed terracing, maybe a few sad fig trees trying their best. The next sign reads, Labor Paret. Work prepares. You spot a crumbling villa off to the left, its roof caved in and vines choking the windows. There's a faded fresco along one wall, a Roman farmer sowing seeds, eyes fixed not on the soil but on the sky. You wonder if he's still there, somewhere in the walls. Mainstream historians widely agree that roads often pass directly through working estates, especially in rural provinces. Travelers would see wealth on display, presses, cisterns, oil jars the size of bathtubs. But over time, those estates fell to ruin, their stones repurposed or forgotten. The roads outlived the houses they served. Fringe tidbit, in some provinces, particularly in Gaul and Hispania, farmers were said to bury charms along the roads to protect their crops. Little amulets shaped like goats, thunderbolts, or oddly enough, tiny sandals. You've probably stepped over dozens by now. You pass another wall, and this one has a deeply etched motto, Planta servas viam tenes. If you protect your roots, the road will hold. It's the kind of thing you want tattooed on your arm, or at least stitched into a throw pillow. The path dips downward into a dry riverbed where water once carved a narrow trench across the road. The Romans had built a clever little stone hump here, a proto-bridge, to let carts cross without sinking into the mud. As you climb up the other side, you spot another marker. Aqua fuit. There was water. Simple, eerie, true. You wonder how many places you've passed on this journey where water, people, even buildings used to be, and now there's nothing but memory and stone. Then you hear it. Not wind, not insects. A voice. Just one. Faint. Maybe singing. You freeze, but it's already gone. Was it behind you? Ahead? Or just part of the road, murmuring back your own thoughts? You step carefully now, listening, and the next sign greets you like a stage cue. Audio. I listen. The stones ahead sparkle with moisture as if dew is forming. Or tears. You take a breath. You walk on. Whatever comes next, you're ready. Your steps grow quieter now, muffled by a thin carpet of dust and moss that's settled over the road like an old quilt. The landscape narrows again, turning into a long, gently rising slope flanked by tall, whispering cypress trees. Their branches lean inward as if they're conspiring with one another, keeping secrets you're not yet allowed to hear. You squint ahead and catch sight of another sign, carved into the base of one of the trees instead of stone. Altitude Sila, the height of silence. And you realize this isn't just quiet. This is ritual silence. Some ancient roads weren't just for travel, they were processional routes used during festivals or sacred rites. In those moments, the road wasn't just a path, it was a stage. The audience, the gods. You're walking one of those now, aren't you? Mainstream historians believe stretches like this led to shrines or oracles, especially in rural zones like Etruria or Magna Graecia. Pilgrims would walk in prescribed silence to prepare their minds for what came next. It wasn't about destination, it was about shedding distractions like snake skins. Your mind tries to shed too, but the trees don't help. They're unsettlingly symmetrical, like someone planted them with a ruler. You count 20 on your left, 20 on your right. You count them again, and somehow there's 21. You blink. Not worth thinking about. At the top of the rise is a single marble pillar with a carved image of a mask, half comedy, half tragedy. And below it, expecta nihil, expect nothing. A laugh escapes you. It's not really funny, but it sort of is, isn't it? The road has now fully transitioned into your passive-aggressive therapist, the one that lets you finish your own sentence, then stares at you until you get uncomfortable. Just past the pillar is a stretch of road that appears to split, not like a fork, but more like the edges fracture, scattering into thin tributaries. Each side path looks almost real, but not quite. One seems to shimmer, another loops back on itself, one disappears into a low blue fog. You look around for guidance, and there it is, burned faintly into a triangular sign hung on a rusted iron hook. Iter in tepidum, the path into uncertainty. Historians still argue whether this phenomenon of fractal roads was ever an actual engineering design or just poetic metaphor. Some claim certain roads near temple complexes purposely disoriented travelers to strip the mind of certainty. Others think it was just poor city planning layered over time like pancakes left too long on the stove. You close your eyes and choose the path that hums, not loudly, just enough to be real. The sound thickens as you walk, a low vibration beneath your feet like the murmur of drums being played a mile underground. The path evens out again, then curves gently, and you're suddenly walking through a circle of statues. They're tall and cracked, some headless, others barely more than silhouettes, but each holds a sign. Not written, but posed, arms outstretched, fingers forming symbols, gestures half caught between salute and warning. In the center of this silent audience is a sign laid flat on a mossy stone. Gestus antiquus, the old gestures. You realize you're standing in what may have once been a forum of movement, a theater, or perhaps an oracular garden where messages were delivered not with words, but through pose and posture. Fringe theory. Some believe there were roads with built-in performance spaces, where certain turns or clearings were used for public displays. Dancers, heralds, even amateur philosophers trying to get someone, anyone, to agree with them. These intersections of movement and message blurred the line between speech and direction. You keep walking, and the statues eventually fade away like they're embarrassed to be seen too long. In their place, color. Stones shift to mosaic. Yes, actual mosaic tiles forming patterns under your feet. They crunch a little under your weight, chipped and worn, but still there. The tiles depict scenes from daily Roman life. A merchant weighing coins, a baker dusting flour, a woman applying eyeliner with a very tiny brush. It's like the road has suddenly become a comic strip, each frame unfolding as you walk. You pause at a particularly vivid tile of a soldier and a child. The soldier has removed his helmet and is giving the child what looks like a lopsided cake. The child's smile is immortalized in red and gold tesserae. It's oddly touching. You step forward to see the next tile and find something unexpected. A mirror. Well, not really a mirror, just highly polished obsidian inset into the floor. It reflects your face, your outline, and very faintly the signs behind you. Above it is a single word, barely etched, 2S. You are. There's no way to read that without hearing it whispered directly into your brain. You stare at your reflection and realize something weird. Your outline is sharper now. Your features feel more present, as if the road has been refining you, little by little. You press on, past the final mosaic tile, and find another long, flat stretch. This one is marked by columns, each maybe 6 feet tall and topped with small metallic bowls. They must have held oil once, or burning coals. Now they hold nothing but wind and shadows. Each column bears the same line, Lux Antiqua, the ancient light. You imagine it. This road, once lit in warm flickers, like stars fallen to earth and spaced perfectly to guide travelers through darkness. Mainstream Roman roads did have night lighting, especially near important cities or ceremonial spaces. They used elevated oil lamps, torch brackets, and occasionally even polished bronze mirrors to reflect moonlight more efficiently. It was as much about presence as illumination, letting travelers know they weren't alone. Just before the next curve is a final column, this one's scorched black. Its bowl is shattered. Inside the base, something is tucked away. A scroll, long dried and barely intact. You hesitate, then pull it free. Just one line remains readable. Memento Iter. Remember the journey. You roll it back up and place it in your bag. Yes, you have a bag now. It feels right. And with that, the curve ahead invites you again. The path bends and begins to descend gently, down into another quiet hollow where the air smells like cinnamon and stone dust. The shadows deepen. You begin to hear a new sound, water, flowing, distant, rhythmic, and you smile just a little because something's waiting for you there. You follow the sound of water like it's a song written just for your feet. The road dips lower still, now a narrow pass carved into limestone, walls pressing closer on both sides. Somewhere above, birds call out, but their voices are distant, like they're flying in a different world. The path ahead shimmers faintly, the light reflecting off shallow, crystal-clear streamlets flowing across the stones. Not deep enough to soak your feet, just enough to keep the road alive. There's a sign just before the first trickle, Viam lavat. It washes the way. And honestly, it feels that way, like a rinse for the mind. The water moves in lazy little curls as if it's in no rush to go anywhere. You walk through it slowly, leaving footprints that fill up and vanish within seconds. Mainstream historical accounts confirm the Romans were obsessed with hydraulic engineering, aqueducts, fountains, drainage. But what's often forgotten is that water was also part of spiritual cleansing. Some ceremonial roads had built-in sluices or gentle channels to let spring water wash across them, literally purifying the path. And here the water sings. A real tune this time, just a few wandering notes that rise from the stones themselves, vibrating as you step. You don't know if it's music or memory, but it wraps around you like warm fog. And then comes a different sign, this one carved into the edge of a submerged tile. Non est mar. Psst, this is not the sea. Helpful. You smile at the absurdity. No, it's not the sea. It's more intimate, closer to a baptismal whisper than a crashing tide. The road wants to remind you you're not being swept away, you're being reset. Further down, you reach a wide pool, only ankle deep, but it glows slightly, the stones beneath it smoothed into ripple shapes, like they're imitating the water above them. In the center is a circular platform of dry stone with a pedestal. Resting atop it, a bronze bowl half filled with dark liquid. You're not told what it is, but the scent is thick, metal, myrrh, and crushed mint leaves. A ceremonial mixture? A line circles the bowl, memoria liquet, memory dissolves. Fringe historians love this idea that Roman roads didn't just go places, they took things away. Burdens, regrets, names. There's a theory that travelers would pour a pinch of salt or ash into a central basin like this to unload their past. Whether that's real or romanticized is still debated, but standing here you understand the appeal. You dip your fingers into the water, cold, fragrant, numbing. Then you walk on. Soon the water narrows again into little canals that braid alongside the road, humming softly. You pass small alcoves carved into the walls, each with a worn carving of a different animal. An owl, a stag, a tortoise, a lion, a monkey. Above them, a shared inscription, Viatorum Formae, forms of the traveler. You wonder what animal you are today, maybe a sleepy bear or a lost goat. No judgment. The road has seen it all. Historians still argue whether these alcoves were meant as spiritual totems, playful decoration, or covert signage for traveler types. Some fringe interpretations go even deeper, suggesting that these animals indicated safe resting zones, or even coded symbols for secret societies. You blink. You're not joining a secret society tonight. You're just trying to get through a bedtime story. The path becomes smoother underfoot again. Stone tiles polished by centuries of water and wandering. You feel the change immediately. You're no longer walking through a washing phase. You're entering containment. The road narrows into a long colonnade, lined with square stone basins on both sides. Most are dry, a few still catch droplets from above. A sign beside the first basin reads, Quod Menet, what remains? Each basin holds something different. A coin, a feather, a tiny bronze bell, a cracked ring. You realize they're offerings, maybe spontaneous, maybe left over from rituals long faded. You're walking through a library of what mattered, one small forgotten object at a time. You stop at a basin that holds a bundle of dried herbs tied with red thread. You think it's rosemary or sage, maybe both. There's no plaque, no explanation, but it smells like someone trying to remember a home they haven't seen in decades. The next basin holds a small clay figure with broken arms, and beside it, etched directly into the stone, Propi est te. It is near. Okay, that's comforting. And also, not. You step carefully now because the wind has changed. It whistles through the columns and makes them sing like flutes. Ahead is a low stone archway, older than anything else you've seen, cracked in 5 places, covered in lichens. You duck your head and pass through it. Everything changes. The road becomes circular, a spiral. You didn't expect this. But here you are, walking in loops, each one slightly lower, as if descending into a spiral staircase of stone and shadow. This isn't just a turn, this is a ritual loop. Another sign appears as you descend. Enter the path. Fringe historians go nuts over spiral paths. There's a belief that certain sacred roads looped intentionally, like Roman labyrinths. These weren't meant to trap, but to cleanse through repetition. With each loop, the noise of the world fades. And honestly, you do feel quieter, more hollow in a good way. One more loop down, and there's a statue at the center. Not a god, not a soldier, Just a woman with closed eyes, her hands held open as if waiting for something. A plaque on her pedestal, Tene Nihil. Hold nothing. You stand there for a moment. You do what she asks. You let go of whatever you were carrying, whatever it was. And as you step beyond her, the spiral uncoils. The path straightens. The wind softens. You walk on barefoot now without realizing when you left your shoes behind. The ground warms beneath you. You hear a chorus of frogs far away, maybe a stream, maybe a memory. One final sign carved gently into a tree root arcing over the road. Quietus. Peaceful. You believe it and you keep going. You're deeper now. Not beneath the earth exactly, but somewhere in that cozy twilight space between outside and other. The air has thickened like warm milk, soft and slow moving. You keep walking, though the road beneath you has become softened stone, as if time itself has been kneading it into velvet. The first thing you notice is the change in the light. It's no longer coming from above or behind or any particular angle. It just sort of exists, like ambient breath, like the inside of a snow globe if it were dusted with amber instead of glitter. A stone slab leans against a leaning wall. Lux interior. The light within. It doesn't feel metaphorical. The road is glowing. You're glowing. It's all sort of gently ridiculous in a calming way. Mainstream scholars describe catacomb roads beneath Roman cities, carefully laid passageways connecting burial chambers, shrines, ossuaries. They weren't grim, not in the way we paint underground spaces now. They were decorated with mosaic ceilings, soft murals, and yes, lamps set into alcoves. They were cities for the dead, but also for the living who visited them. This feels like one of those places, but elevated, like you're in a dream version of what Rome hoped its underworld would look like. A new sound joins your steps. Chimes. Soft, irregular, caught on unseen breezes. You pause and look up. There, dangling from a low arching stone beam, is a string of delicate metal tags inscribed with messages in Latin and Greek. They're memory markers, like wind-blown post-it notes from the past. You step close to one and see the words Paulus Transiit. Paulus passed by, just that. A name, a footprint in sound. You touch another. Noli timere, do not be afraid. And that one feels like it's for you. Historians still argue whether the underground memory markers served as literal grave tags or symbolic trail stamps. The lines between burial and travel often blurred in Roman religious rites. Some fringe scholars believe these were pilgrimage tokens, left like breadcrumbs by travelers seeking a second life. You keep walking through the sound of messages. Then the chimes stop, abruptly, because you've entered a space with no ceiling. You look up and see nothing, just sky, but it's the wrong sky. It's the color of candle wax and carries no stars, no moon, just blank warmth. Beneath your feet, the road has transformed again, not into stone, but glass, frosted, cloudy, and somehow warm. Your footsteps make no sound. You look down and catch a glimpse of images moving inside the floor, like dreams trapped beneath ice. One image shows a group of people in togas sitting in a circle, each holding a small sign with a different Latin word, via, somnium, oblivio. Another image shows a giant arch collapsing in slow motion, but when it hits the ground, it turns into water. You step back. Another panel flares with movement. A map, maybe? It flickers with the outline of a road that looks like the one you've been following, winding into a spiral, then dissolving into script. You see the word intus, inside, then it's gone. You move forward as carefully as walking across someone's memory. At the far end of the glass path is a monolith, a black basalt-like block with grooves worn into its surface by time and fingertips. Set into the base is a cup, empty. But you feel thirsty. A sign on the monolith reads, Bibin aquam, drink not water, rude, but okay. You raise the cup and wait, and slowly dew gathers inside, thick and honey-like. It smells like figs and iron and something you once dreamed during a flu nap. You sip just a bit, and you feel not full, not healed, but seen. Fringe interpretations claim ancient well stones like this were more than water sources. They were reflection wells, spiritual pauses placed along roads to taste the self before continuing. Think ASMR, but in beverage form. Your path curves again, sloping downward into darkness, but it's a friendly darkness, thick and hushed like a pillow fort made of stone. The walls are smooth and domed, and the only illumination now comes from your own outline, which softly glows like bioluminescent jellyfish. On one wall, a mural appears, not painted but carved in light. A series of glowing lines shows a traveler moving along a winding road. At each turn, a Latin word appears: silentium, tempus, umbra, veritas. It's your journey, mapped in metaphor. And at the final turn, iterum. Again, you smile. Kind of nervously, are you doing this all over again? But no, just ahead, you see a final passage lined with shimmering sand. The grains sparkle as though they remember stars. You walk barefoot through them and they sing, a humming vibration through your arches, up your spine and into your chest. Then a sign, ultimus gratis. The final step. Okay, this is it. You climb a short stone stairway, 7 steps. Each step glows a little dimmer than the last, until the final one is almost dark. But then you reach the threshold. Beyond it lies a quiet grove. Cypress trees again, but this time they're bowing outward, welcoming instead of judging. A single Roman bench sits in the center. A stone lantern flickers softly beside it. You sit, of course you do. And then you notice another traveler is already here. They look like you, but older or maybe younger. They hold a book. You recognize the cover. It's this story. They smile. You say nothing, and neither do they. Because here, everything's already been said. You sit there for a while, maybe a moment, maybe a decade, on the old Roman bench in that hushed grove where the cypress trees curl like gentle parentheses around your quiet. The other traveler, the one with your face and a slightly different shape to their memory, simply watches the road you just came from. No questions, no riddles, no dramatic twists, just stillness. A bird's once, then silence again. The stone lantern next to you pulses faintly, like it's syncing with your heartbeat, or maybe guiding it, slowing it down note by note. You don't even notice that your hands have unclenched, or that your shoulders are no longer trying to hold up your whole life. You look down at your feet. The dust has worn off, the soles are clean. Not fresh exactly, but washed. In the center of the grove, there's one last Roman sign. Small, subtle, set into the earth like a grave marker, but standing straight like a thought. You have found it. No hint what it is. Maybe peace, maybe just the end of the road. Mainstream historians have long debated the use of these terminal waystones at the end of sacred Roman roads. Some insist they were milestones, just boring distance markers dressed up in ceremonial nonsense. Others believe they marked personal thresholds, the symbolic end of a transformation or pilgrimage, not just the physical trail. Fringe theories go further. They claim that these markers were part of a mind ritual, perhaps tied to cultic rites of memory, where the road functioned like a dream walk, and crossing its end triggered the traveler's subconscious to wake. But you don't feel woken up. You feel folded in, like you're being held by time itself. Your double, the one holding the book, finally moves. They stand, nod toward the bench, and disappear between the trees without a sound. No footprints left behind. You wonder if they were ever real. Maybe they were you, or someone else who needed to sit here before going forward. You don't follow them. Instead, your gaze turns to a low stone door on the opposite end of the grove. It wasn't there a moment ago. You're sure of it, but now it is. Square, unmarked, slightly open like it's been expecting you. A faint scent escapes through the crack. Not incense this time. Something simpler, fresh bread, rosemary, warmth. And underneath it, something sweeter still, fig leaves, old parchment, sandalwood. You step through the doorway, and immediately the world tilts, because you are not in a grove anymore. You are back on the road, but this time it's different. Familiar yet strange. The stones are smoother, the signs more refined. You recognize the spiral path from earlier, but now it spirals upward instead of down. The air is lighter, cooler, and you feel less heavy in your bones. You reach out to touch the wall beside you. It responds, not with movement, but with memory. A soft sound plays, one you haven't heard since childhood, a whispered lullaby, the crackle of an old recording, a name spoken gently, one you'd almost forgotten was ever yours. You keep walking. There are no signs here, only mirrors, thin, glassy panels on the walls that catch your face in passing, but each one shows something slightly different. One shows you smiling. Another shows you tired. Another shows you laughing so hard it breaks your heart a little. One mirror doesn't show you at all, just stars. A cluster shaped suspiciously like the Via Appia itself. You pause in front of that one the longest. You don't know why. Maybe because it doesn't expect anything of you. The hallway narrows again, and now you're surrounded by voice fragments. Whispers, jokes, arguments, lullabies. They're not spooky or ghostly. They sound real, human, stubborn, sweet. A tapestry of all the people who ever traveled this road and said things they thought were lost forever. You hear one line rise above the others, just clear enough to catch. Don't forget to look up. So you do, and there's the ceiling, painted with a Roman mosaic of impossible intricacy. Gods and mortals, maps and stars, cities and gardens. It's not just decorative, it's moving, shifting slowly with every step you take, like a memory rewinding itself just to welcome you. And then the scent changes again. Sea salt. And there it is ahead of you, a soft shimmer like morning mist burning off under sun. You are close to the end, or the beginning, but before you reach it, the final chamber appears, octagonal, lit from beneath. And in the center, a pedestal holds the strangest Roman sign of all. Not Latin, not Greek, just a single word in English, carved into polished marble, still. Not as in unmoving, as in even now, despite everything, regardless of what came before, you are still walking, still wondering, still here. Historians, those funny, fussy, clever people, have no record of this chamber. Of course they don't. It exists only for those who've walked every version of the road in their own strange way. You step forward and place your hand on the pedestal. The floor hums beneath you. Not loud, not commanding, just a low lullaby vibration. Like a parent patting the back of a half-sleeping child. You close your eyes, and in the distance, someone laughs. You don't know them, but you trust the sound, because it means you're not alone. You never were. And as the chamber fades into soft color, like watercolor left in the rain, your body begins to slow. Your heartbeat falls into the rhythm of the ancient road. The stones remember your name now, even if you forget it later. The pedestal breathes under your palm. Not literally, of course not, but it pulses with that quiet insistence of something very old and very patient. Like a heart carved from stone, still beating even after the empire it belonged to forgot how to listen. You release your touch and take a slow step back. And now, the chamber around you begins to dissolve. Not with a crash, not with a swirl of magic smoke or a trapdoor floor. No, it simply fades. Layer by layer, wall first, then ceiling, then the pedestal itself, as if it had only been a placeholder for something deeper. In its place, a path. Another one, not stone this time, but wooden planks, sun-bleached and grooved by sand. You can hear waves now, gentle ones, lapping against some distant shore. You walk, of course, because you always walk. That's what travelers do, even when they don't know where it's leading. The air smells salty and rich, like ocean wind mixed with old vellum. There's a hint of something roasted, hazelnuts maybe. Definitely not a Roman delicacy. Someone nearby is breaking the rules of historical immersion, and frankly, it smells amazing. Ahead, on a low hill that appears far too suddenly to be natural, stands one last Roman column. Just one, tilted at an angle that says, "I've seen things, and possibly I shouldn't be standing, but here I am." Wrapped around its base is a sign, "Redere Iter," return the journey. You raise your eyebrow, because of course, historians still argue about what this phrase means. Return the journey to whom? To what? Is it about retracing steps, offering something back, a debt, a gift, a curse, or just the Roman version of thanks for playing? Fringe thinkers whisper even wilder theories, that redere iter was a euphemism in mystery cults, that it wasn't about travel at all, but about letting go, giving the path back to time, releasing your need to finish it, which honestly feels like the right vibe now. Because even though this has all been very strange and at times a little too sparkly for serious historical walking, you've learned something. Maybe a lot of somethings. Not about emperors or dates or boring old battles, but about roads. Not just where they lead, but what they hold. Your hand grazes the edge of the weathered column, and there, behind it, sits a wooden sign, modern this time. No Latin, just a simple etched phrase, "Exit through the gift shop." You snort, because of course there's a gift shop. You step forward and, yep, suddenly you're in it. Tiny, dusty, crammed with little trinkets, miniature mile markers, togas for squirrels, jars of imaginary Roman sand labeled genuine. A sleepy attendant at the counter snoozes beneath a sign that reads, "All sales final, especially time." You pick up a keychain shaped like a Roman sandal. Why not? And beside the register, tucked just behind a tiny marble bust of Emperor Caracalla, who definitely would have overcharged you, is a final placard. You've arrived, but you never left. That one hits different. You don't buy anything. You don't need to. You already have what matters. The road under your feet, the signs in your head, and the thousand strange, sleepy stories the stones whispered to you along the way. So you leave the gift shop, and you step into, well, let's find out. The path behind you gently fades like a dream the moment you stop chasing it. You are still now. The hum of the Roman roads, those twisty, dusty arteries that once pulsed with sandals, wagons, and wild ambition, slows into a lullaby beat. Each stone has said what it needed to say. Each sign, no matter how absurd or beautiful or eerily specific, has pointed you gently back to yourself. The air is cooler here, thicker with quiet, and your limbs feel heavier, but not in a tired way. More like settled, like soup after it's been stirred, finally coming to rest. Your breath deepens. The last image that floats behind your closed eyes is a crooked milestone, half-buried, moss-covered, and smiling like someone who knows where you're going next, but wouldn't dream of spoiling it. And that's good, because the road never really ends. It just changes names. Sometimes it's paved, sometimes it's chalk. Sometimes it's the warm wooden floor under your bed as you tiptoe towards sleep. Tonight, it is this, a memory you're already forgetting, and a journey that lives inside your breath, your bones, and the thousand quiet questions you'll never need to answer. Let them rest now. Let yourself rest. Let the road wait for tomorrow. You've earned your stillness. Now breathe out one last time, long and slow, and fall gently into the hush.